بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما، وأصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. Inshallah, we're going to continue with the explanation of the book تعليم المتعلم طريق التعلم by Imam Burhanuddin الزرنوجي عليه رحمة الله. And we're going to continue from the next chapter, which is the chapter about glorifying or respecting the knowledge and the people of knowledge. So the Shaykh, he says, فصل في تعظيم العلم وأهله, which is the chapter about glorifying the and venerating and honoring the knowledge and the people of knowledge, meaning the scholars, those who are the carriers and the possessors of ilm. طيب. So we're going to see in this chapter, as we'll read through it, the Shaykh is going to be speaking about the importance of magnifying and glorifying the status and the level of ilm and its people. So he begins by saying, rahimahullah ta'ala, اعلم أن طالب العلم لا ينال العلم ولا ينتفع به إلا بتعظيم العلم وأهله وتعظيم الأستاذ وتوقيره. He says that know that indeed the student of knowledge will not attain beneficial knowledge, or he will not attain knowledge and he won't benefit from that knowledge except by glorifying knowledge and the people who carry and possess the knowledge, and also respecting and venerating and honoring the ustad, the one who's teaching you knowledge. فقد قيل ما وصل من وصل إلا بالحرمة. The Shaykh, he said that it has been said, he's mentioning a statement that's been mentioned by those that came before, which means ما وصل من وصل إلا بالحرمة, that the individual or the person has not attained what he has reached or attained except through respect. Right? So he's referring to the student of knowledge. That the student of knowledge did not reach the level that they reached it except by having respect for the one they're seeking knowledge from, and the respecting of the knowledge itself. وَمَا سَقَطَ مَنْ سَقَطَ إِلَّا بِتَرْكِ الْحُرْمَةِ. And those who have failed, have not failed, or those who have dropped off of and have failed and were not successful in reaching what they wanted to reach in knowledge, they did not fail except for their abandoning of respect and hurma. Right? So that's one statement he mentions. He says another statement, qila, it's also been said. Again, who said it? Allahu A'lam. But he's mentioning that as a statement that's being said. So these are statements of wisdom. Another one he says here, al-hurmatu khayrun min at-ta'a. That respect is better than obedience. Respect is better than obedience. Then he says, ألا ترى أن الإنسان لا يكفر بالمعصية وإنما يكفر باستخفافها وبترك الحرمة. He says, do you not notice or do you not recognize and see that the human being will not be considered a disbeliever or will not be taken out of the fold of Islam as a result of a sin, but rather they will be taken out of the fold of Islam because of their how they humiliate or how they mock or how they take lightly the matters of the religion and they leave off respect. And he's saying that disrespecting the deen and aspects of the deen could necessitate disbelief, while committing a sin does not necessarily result in a person being a disbeliever. So he's trying to drive the point home of the importance of respect in general and how weighty the issue of ihtiram and hurma and respect is. Okay. He continues and he says, وَمِن تَعْظِيمِ الْعِلْمِ تَعْظِيمُ الْمُعَلِّمِ. That what from glorifying knowledge is glorifying the teacher. So like I said, here he's going to be speaking, this chapter, he'll be speaking about different aspects that are important for us to keep in mind, which comes under the whole discussion of venerating and magnifying and glorifying and respecting knowledge. And as a point of benefit, Sheikh Salih Al-Usaymi, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, he has a book that he wrote which is called Ta'zimul Ilm, where he mentions about 20 principles or 20 points regarding the importance or the matters to take into consideration to venerate knowledge in the people of knowledge. So here the Shaykh continues and he says, from the veneration of knowledge is the respect and the veneration of the ustad or the muallim, the teacher. قال علي كرم الله وجهه أنا عبد من علمني حرفا واحدا أنا عبد من علمني حرفا واحدا إن شاء باع وإن شاء أعتق وإن شاء استرق. He said, he's quoting Ali ibn Abi Talib, although there is no there is no exact chain or anything proving that this was a statement of Ali ibn Abi Talib, but you have meanings similar to the statement mentioned by other people from the Salaf. So the quote says here, أنا عبد من علمني حرفا واحدا. I am a slave to the one who has taught me even one letter. If he wishes, he can sell me. If he wishes, he can free me. If he wishes, he can continue to keep me as a slave. Bima'na, he's mentioning the meaning of the concept of how the person is indebted to the one who taught them. Right? That's why you have some statements of some of the people of the past where they will say, Man allamani harfan, sirtu lahu abdan. That whoever taught me even one letter, then I have become a servant to them. I am at their service. I am a slave to them. Okay? And there's other statements similar in nature to that as well. طيب, there's a narration that's mentioned that has a meaning to that. There's a difference of opinion as to its authenticity of it. Bayhaqi mentions in Shu'ab al-Iman, also Tabarani in the Mu'jam al-Kabir, from Abu Umam al-Bahili, his statement where he said, من علم عبدا آية من كتاب الله فهو مولاه. That whoever teaches a slave even one ayah of Allah's book, then he is that person's, he has emancipated them, or he is a person that is their wali, the one that is their over them. Why? Because of the fact that he has taught him an ayah. In any case, the Shaykh here is trying to mention the statement, and he'll bring more examples of that, about the status that the one who taught you has over you. And if you really think about that, in reality, it's very true, right? Whether it's a person whoever it is that taught you how to read Arabic or how to read the Quran, right? Which is a person that deserves even more ihtiram and respect from you, because they, by the permission of Allah, taught you the tools that you need to read Allah's book or to understand Allah's book, or even whatever it might be. The teacher who taught you, ABC, right? You know how to read right now, and you know how to write right now, and you can understand and conceptualize the language, but there was a point in time that somebody actually taught you how to read, how to write, how to speak. So that person has a huge favor over you, because they, by Allah's permission, granted you the ability and gave you the ability to excel in literacy and understanding. طيب. The Shaykh continues and he says, وَقَدْ أُنْشِدْتُ فِي ذَلِكَ شِعْرًا. And he said, and about this topic or about this matter, I recited some lines of poetry. رأيت أحق الحق حق المعلم وأوجبه حفظا على كل مسلم لقد حق أن يهدى إليه كرامة لتعليم حرف واحد ألف درهم. He says, رأيت أحق الحق حق المعلم. I came to understand, or I came to realize, or I've seen that the greatest right is the most deserving right is the right of the teacher. Right? أحق الحق, the most deserving of the haqq, or the most deserving of the right, is the right of the teacher. وأوجبه حفظا على كل مسلم. And it's an obligation for every Muslim to preserve this matter, to to give their teacher their حق. لقد حق أن يهدى إليه كرامة لتعليم حرف واحد ألف درهم. He says indeed that though the teacher is deserving to be gifted as a gift out of honoring and respecting the one who taught me even one letter, for that one letter he taught me, he deserves to be paid 1,000 dirhams, 1,000 gold coins. He's saying that the amount of the major favor that the sheikh or the teacher has done for me to even make me know how to read one letter, he deserves for that one letter alone 1,000 dirhams. طيب. That is lines of poetry that the author himself of this book he read or he wrote. فإن من علمك حرفا مما تحتاج إليه في الدين فهو أبوك في الدين. He said, whoever taught you even one letter from those letters that you need for your deen, then that person becomes like your father in the deen. Right? Some of the ulama, they would say that the fathers there's two types of fathers. You have your biological father, right, who gave birth to you, and he has his haqq over you as your father and your parent, as Allah clarified in the Quran. And then you have your father in the deen, and this is referring to your muallim or your teacher or the one who has taught you, who has showed you the path, who has educated you in terms of how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. And some of the ulama of the past used to say this. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, for example, he said, آباء في الدين وهم أجدى له في مصالح آخرته وهو مأمور بالدعاء لهم وبرهم وشكرهم. He says that the fathers of the deen are the ones who have showed you those things that are the most beneficial for you for the afterlife. So it is imperative that you make dua for them and you are good to them and you show your gratitude towards them. طيب. So the Shaykh continues, the author, he continues and he says, وكان أستاذنا الشيخ الإمام سديد الدين الشيرازي رحمه الله تعالى يقول قال مشايخنا رحمهم الله من أراد أن يكون ابنه عالما فينبغي أن يراعي الغرباء من الفقهاء ويكرمهم ويطعمهم ويعظمهم ويعطيهم شيئا فإن لم يكن ابنه عالما يكون حفيده عالما. Here the author, he says that our teacher, he's quoting one of his teachers, and his name is Sadiduddin al-Shirazi rahimahullah ta'ala. He says that our teachers used to tell us, whoever wants their son, right, whoever wants their son to be a scholar, فَيَنْبَغِي أَنْ يُرَاعِيَ الْغُرَبَاء مِنَ الْفُقَهَاء, then it is important for him to take care of the guests from the fuqaha and the scholars. Whenever a sheikh or a scholar comes as a guest, to honor them and take care of them, right? يُكْرِمُهُمْ وَيُطْعِمُهُمْ, to feed them, to welcome them, to invite them, to respect and glorify them, to give them whatever it is that you can give them. And the Shaykh says, by doing so, he's saying that by doing so, that is hopefully a means of your child taking on the path of becoming a scholar. فَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ ابْنُهُ عَالِمًا يَكُونُ حَفِيدُهُ عَالِمًا. If not his son, then his grandson, right? And here he's trying to mention the barakah of that comes from having ihtiram and respect for the people of knowledge. As we'll come to see, of course, that veneration and that respect for the people of knowledge is one that is done in balance, without going too overboard and extreme in respecting them beyond their haqq, and without putting down their status and their manzila. طيب? So it's important to keep that in mind. He says, وَمِن تَوْقِيرِ الْمُعَلِّمِ, and from the ways of respecting and venerating the teacher and honoring the teacher, أَلَّا يَمْشِيَ أَمَامَهُ, that the person does not walk in front of his teacher. وَلَا يَجْلِسُ مَكَانَهُ, and he does not sit in his seat or in his place. ولا يبتدئ بالكلام عنده إلا بإذنه ولا يكثر الكلام عنده إلا بإذنه. And he does not initiate talking in front of him except with the permission of his teacher, nor does he talk too much in front of the teacher except with the permission of the teacher. ولا يسأل شيئا عند ملالته, and that he should not ask him questions when the teacher is exhausted. ويراعي الوقت, and that he takes into consideration the time of the teacher. He does not waste his time or her time. If the teacher is this, whoever it might be, the muallim or the ustadha, you don't waste their time, nor do you overburden them if they are tired. ولا يدق الباب بل يصبر حتى يخرج. And you don't knock on their door, rather you be patient and wait until they come out of their home. Right? That's almost in line with what the situation was with Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu. Right? It was narrated that Abdullah ibn Abbas that he said that he would study, he would go and seek knowledge from one of the neighborhoods from where the Ansar were, from the ulama of the Ansar. And during the time when people are probably taking a nap, he'll go in front of their home and he wouldn't knock on, he'll wait outside and probably even take a nap outside until the sheikh would come out from the Sahaba, and then he would go and seek knowledge. And they would say, Subhanallah, you're the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, right? We have more right to come to you than you sitting outside here. And then he would say to them, no, this is something that I should do, right? And we learned something from that. The importance of ihtiram and respecting the mashayikh and not being overburdening to them. طيب. فالحاصل, he says, in any case, أنه يطلب ويجتنب سخطه, that the student of knowledge should seek the pleasure of the teacher, and he should stay away from making the teacher angry and upset. ويمتثل أمره في غير معصية الله تعالى, and he obeys the command of his teacher without disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That balance that I mentioned earlier, that you obey your teacher, but of course obedience to anybody has to be in line with the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't go overboard in obeying our teachers if it's not in line with, if it goes against the obedience of Allah. فإن لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق, because there is no obedience to the creation in the disobedience of Allah the Creator. Right? And that's an important principle to remember. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. طيب. And this is in line with, the statement is in line with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Ahmad brings it in his Musnad, hadith Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الله, that there is no obedience in any creation in disobeying Allah. If somebody commands you to disobey Allah, then you say no. So here the Shaykh is saying that you should obey your teacher as long as it's in line with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. طيب. كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن شر الناس من يذهب دينه لدنيا غيره. He mentioned a statement that he attributed to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, and it's a narration where the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said that the worst of people are those who would lose their dunya for they will lose their religion and their deen for the dunya of somebody else. They'll give up their own deen for the dunya of somebody else. The meaning is correct, although there is some weakness in the hadith. Ibn Majah narrates the hadith in his Sunan. Na'am, Ibn Majah, and from the hadith of Abi Umam, and actually the wording in Ibn Majah is من شر الناس منزلة عند الله يوم القيامة عبد أذهب آخرته بدنيا غيره. That the person who has the worst position in the sight of Allah on the Day of Judgment, and from those who have an evil position in the sight of Allah on the Day of Judgment, is a person who sacrificed and gave up his afterlife for the dunya of somebody else. Right? In any case, some of the ulama say that it's Hasan, the hadith. Some say it's Da'if. Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says the hadith is weak. And he puts it in his Da'if al-Jami'. Some say it's Hasan. In any case, the meaning though is sound in terms of the concept of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to obey somebody else. Right? That's the outcome of what we mentioned earlier. Right? The statement of the Prophet ﷺ, that there is no obedience to any of the creation in the disobedience of Allah. Because the outcome of disobeying Allah for the sake of obeying somebody is what? You're sacrificing your akhirah for somebody else's dunya. طيب. And na'am. So the Shaykh continues still talking about the respecting and the honoring of the teacher. Right? So we remember the chapter is about respecting knowledge and venerating knowledge and the people of knowledge. وَمِن تَوْقِيرِهِ, and from the respecting and the venerating of the teacher is تَوْقِيرُ أَوْلَادِهِ, respecting or venerating or honoring the children of the teacher or the sheikh. وَمَنْ يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ, or anybody that's connected to the sheikh. وكان, and then he mentions a story here or a statement of a scholar. He says, وَكَانَ أُسْتَاذُنَا شيخ الإسلام برهان الدين صاحب الهداية. He says, and our teacher, the author is saying this, our teacher, Burhanuddin, the author of the book Al-Hidayah, he's quoted him several times so far in the book already, and here's another quote he's quoting him. He says, he told us a story, أن واحدا من كبار أئمة بخارى, that one of the major scholars of Bukhara, كان يجلس مجلس الدرس, he would be sitting teaching his class. وكان يقوم في خلال الدرس أحيانا, and once in a while he would stand up in the middle of a class and he would go somewhere and then he would come back. فسألوه عن ذلك, so he was asked, why do you get up in the middle of the class sometimes? And then the Shaykh, he said, إن ابن أستاذي يلعب مع الصبيان في السكة, that the son of my teacher was playing, yani the child, the son of his sheikh was playing in the courtyard outside of the masjid. ويجيء أحيانا إلى باب المسجد. Once in a while he comes to the door of the masjid. Okay, فإذا رأيته أقوم له تعظيما لأستاذي. So he says, when I see him, I would stand up in honoring my teacher. Now, just to kind of talk about that point for a little bit. طبعا, this statement here of the sheikh is a little bit extreme. And there's ghulu in it, yani going out of your way to stand up for a child. Aslan, there's a difference of opinion as to can you stand up for the teacher himself. And the teacher or the sheikh or the person, yani there's a difference of opinion of should we stand up ta'zeeman for in honoring the person or not, right? So if that's the case for the person who's an adult, then can we say that it's something that is munasib to say that, oh, we're going to stand up in venerating of the young child? And not the intent is out of love for his teacher. But that is a bit extreme, right? It's always important that we have balance. Na'am, we show love and we respect and we honor, but we don't go out of our way to, and it's not natural to be going out of your way to venerate a child for the sake of your teacher. Yes, you love your teacher, but you give the teacher the haqq he deserves without necessarily going overboard. طيب. So here, although it's a nice gesture on the part of the sheikh, but it's a bit extreme. والله أعلم. وكان القاضي الإمام فخر الدين الأرسابندي رئيس الأئمة في مرو. He says another imam, his name is Fakhruddin al-Arsabandi, from the imams of Marw, which is that area in near Khurasan. نعم. وكان السلطان يحترمه غاية الاحترام. يعني the ruler or the sultan or the amir of that area used to respect the scholar a lot. وكان يقول إنما وجدت هذا المنصب بخدمة الأستاذ. يعني the sultan would say, I got the position that I have now as the leader of the people because of my khidmah and my service to this sheikh, to my teacher, to this sheikh, and giving him and respecting him. فإني كنت أخدم الأستاذ القاضي الإمام أبا يزيد الدبوسي وكنت أخدمه وأطبخ طعامه 30 سنة ولا آكل منها شيئا. He said, نعم, he said, for indeed I used to, نعم, so the sheikh is saying, I would serve my teacher, who was a qadi, and he mentioned his name, Abu Yazid al-Dabusi. I used to serve my sheikh, and I used to cook for him, and I used to service him for 30 years. And when I would serve him and cook for him, I would not eat from anything from his food that I would prepare for him. طيب, so he's trying to mention how he would honor and venerate and respect his teacher. Although some of the books of tarajim, its biographies, they mention there's a discrepancy in that statement because of the fact that the Sheikh Fakhruddin was not a student of Aba Yazid, but he was a Sheikh who was a friend of his teacher. So he said that if he was not a student of his, then it's difficult to conceptualize how he would serve him for 30 years if he wasn't even his student. He was a student of that Sheikh's friend. But in any case, the point is, just trying to drive home the concept of respecting and honoring the teacher and the person of knowledge and servicing them and being at their service and benefiting from them. The Shaykh continues and he says, وكان الشيخ الإمام الأجل شمس الدين عفوا شمس الأئمة الحلواني أو الحلواني قد خرج من بخارى وسكن في بعض القرى أياما لحادثة وقعت له وقد زاره تلاميذه غير الشيخ الإمام القاضي شمس الأئمة أبي بكر الزرنجي. So he says that another imam of al-Hulwani or al-Halwani, he says that one time I left Bukhara and I lived in some of the villages for some time outside of Bukhara because of an incident that took place. I guess something that happened between him and his teacher. Something took place and he ended up leaving his class and leaving his teacher and moving out. وقد زاره تلاميذه غير الشيخ الإمام القاضي. So he says that the students came and visited him without the Imam. And then he said to them when they met him, لما لم تزورني? Why do you not visit me? Why did you not come back and visit? فقال له كنت مشغولا لخدمة الوالدة. He said, I couldn't come back because I was busy in the service of my mother. فقال ترزق العمر ولا ترزق رونق الدرس. He said, you will be gifted with a long life, but you will not be gifted the gift of tasting the sweetness or loving or enjoying and benefiting from the lesson. Obviously, because he's not in the lesson, he is servicing his mother. وكان كذلك, and he said that's what happened to that individual. فإنه كان يسكن في أكثر أوقاته القرى. Most of the time he lived in the villages in the outskirts. ولم ينتظم له الدرس, and he did not have the capacity to engage in teaching and studies because of what he was involved in. And then the Shaykh, he says, فَمَنْ تَأَذَّى مِنْهُ أُسْتَاذُهُ يَحْرُمُ بَرَكَةَ الْعِلْمِ وَلَا يَنْتَفِعُ بِهِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. He says, whoever brings harm or has something that causes harm to their teacher, they are prevented from the blessings of learning. And they will not benefit from much except for a little. So he's saying that it might be that whatever it is that happened between him and his teacher caused him to not have the barakah to be engaged in seeking knowledge, right? Although he was engaged in something else that was khair, but he was not muwaffaq and he was not given success in this matter. And that's an important point to keep in mind. This is very important. The issue of you should not, it's important for the student of knowledge not to disrespect their teachers and the people of knowledge. Even if they reach to a level where they have come to an understanding and they might not necessarily agree with certain things of their teacher. It's possible, right? That disagreement can exist respectfully, right? Based with knowledge. But those who make it a point to disrespect and disregard and put down people who have a favor over them in teaching them something, and they disrespect them, a lot of times that leads to their barakah of them seeking knowledge being prevented, right? So this is something to keep in mind, right? So no matter who it is, somebody, like we said earlier, right? Somebody taught you even one letter, right? You should have some gratitude towards them, right? Somebody taught you how to pray, right? Maybe somebody by Allah's permission, guided you to Islam, whatever it might be. Yeah, mumkin, it's possible that there are certain things now Allah has blessed you, you've learned, you have some type of understanding of the religion, and there might be some criticisms you might have of that teacher of yours, but that person who has taught you something, but that does not eliminate or take away the fact that they deserve your respect for what they have benefited you with and what they have taught you with. طيب? And then the author, he brings a statement, a line of poetry where he says, إِنَّ الْمُعَلِّمَ وَالطَّبِيبَ كِلَاهُمَا لا ينصحان إذا هما لم يكرما فاصبر لدائك إن جفوت طبيبه واقنع بجهلك إن جفوت معلما. He says, إن المعلم والطبيب كلاهما, indeed the teacher and the doctor, both of those two, لا ينصحان إذا هما لم يكرما, they do not necessarily give advice or give somebody advice if they are not respected or appreciated, right? If they will keep their services to themselves if they are not honored and respected. فاصبر لدائك إن جفوت طبيبه. He says, نعم. He says, فاصبر لدائك إن جفوت طبيبه. So be patient or bear with your illness and your disease if you have wronged your doctor or your healer, right? Be patient with it, right? Until you rectify it, and then maybe he'll try to help you out after that. وَقْنَعْ بِجَهْلِكَ إِن جَفَوْتَ مُعَلِّمًا. And be content also, or be satisfied with your ignorance if you have wronged your teacher. And you've wronged the teacher, you've done him wrong, most likely the teacher will not want to engage with you anymore. So you gotta stand on your 10 toes and be patient with your ignorance, because now you're not gonna benefit from whatever you could benefit from him at that moment anymore. Allahumma, if you rectify the situation. طيب. So again, he's driving the point home of the importance of the respect and the ihtiram that one should have for the one who has taught them. وحكي أن الخليفة هارون الرشيد بعث ابنه إلى الأصمعي. He mentioned another story about the Khalifa, the Abbasi Khalifa, Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid was one of the Khulafa and one of the most noble Khulafa from the Khulafa of the Abbasis. Rahimahullah. طيب. He sent his son to go study under Al-Asma'i. Al-Asma'i, Abu Sa'id, Abdul Malik ibn Qalib ibn Abdul Malik al-Asma'i al-Basri. He was one of the major scholars of the Arabic language. He was from the most knowledgeable people of the Lugha. So he sent him to his son, the Khalifa, right? And the Khalifa of the Muslims sent his son to go study under Al-Asma'i, لِيُعَلِّمَهُ الْعِلْمَ وَالْأَدَبَ, to teach him knowledge and to teach him character and manners. طيب? So to put him in line, to teach him knowledge and manners. فرآه يوما يتوضأ ويغسل رجله وابن الخليفة يصب الماء على رجله. He says that one day the Khalifa, Harun al-Rashid, he saw Al-Asma'i making wudu. He was washing his feet, and his son, the Khalifa's son, was pouring the water over, for the Sheikh to wash his feet. Does that make sense? So the son is pouring the water and the Sheikh is washing his feet. And the Khalifa saw this. فَعَاتَبَ الْخَلِيفَةُ الْأَصْمَعِيُّ فِي ذَلك. Then the Khalifa, he criticized Al-Asma'i for that. Why? What did he say to him? He said to him, إِنَّمَا بَعَثْتُهُ إِلَيْكَ لِتُعَلِّمَهُ وَتُؤَدِّبَهُ فَلِمَاذَا لَمْ تَأْمُرْهُ بِأَنْ يَصُبَّ الْمَاءَ بِإِحْدَى يَدَيْهِ وَيَغْسِلَ بِالْأُخْرَى رِجْلِكَ. He said, I sent my son to you so that you can teach him and you can educate him and you can teach him manners. So why don't you tell him to use one hand to pour the water and use his other hand to wash your feet? Why are you washing your own feet and he's only pouring the water? He should be doing both. He should be pouring the water. You should just be sitting there with your feet. He should be pouring the water and he should also be washing your feet. He's trying to drive the point home of the importance of the student, and he wants his son to be taught the importance of servicing and respecting the teacher. Does that make sense? So and he has no privilege, although he is the son of the Khalifa of the land. And there's no privilege for you despite that fact. You still have to show respect to your teacher by serving him, by being good to him, etc. طيب. ومن تعظيم العلم تعظيم الكتاب. The Shaykh continues by talking about he spoke about from venerating knowledge is what? Venerating and respecting and glorifying the teacher. Now he's talking about the book. What the student is, the books that the student is collecting, the book he's writing in, All of that. تعظيم الكتاب. Okay? جزاك الله خير شيخ. الله يحفظكم. ومن تعظيم العلم تعظيم الكتاب فينبغي لطالب العلم ألا يأخذ الكتاب إلا بالطهارة. First thing he says is honoring the book. This book could be the Quran. It could be يعني من باب أولى the Quran, of course. The Quran itself has a special status, but here he's referring to the book that the student is writing in. And I'm saying that because the context of what's going to be coming up later on is talking about that. What you're writing with when you're seeking knowledge, etc. What you're recording, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the statements of the ulama, etc. The ilm that you are learning. He says, number one, فَيَنْبَغِي, it is befitting for the student of knowledge that he does not take the book unless he is in a state of tahara. بمعنى he has wudu. Okay? Now, of course, it's nothing that is obligatory, but this is something that is encouraged. And this is something that the ulama of the past used to do. Right? When you see, for example, Imam Malik saying that he would not teach or write anything from the Muwatta except that he was in a state of wudu. Right? And this is something that was common amongst the ulama of hadith. That when they'll be writing hadith, or they'll be reading hadith, or they'll be narrating hadith to others, or they'll be listening to hadith being narrated to them, they would do so in a state of wudu out of respect for the kalam of the Prophet ﷺ. طيب. وحكي عن الشيخ شمس الأئمة الحلواني رحمه الله تعالى أنه قال إنما نلت هذا العلم بالتعظيم فإني ما أخذت الكاغد إلا بالطهارة. This sheikh, he's quoting this sheikh who said, I did not reach what I have reached in terms of knowledge except for venerating and respecting knowledge. And he said, I would not take a kaghad is normally the sheet or whatever it is that they take to use in the past to write notes on. It's like the notebook, right? So I will not take the book or the notebook to write on, except that I was in a state of wudu. طيب. So that word kaghad is an Arabic term that originally it was a Persian term, and it's referring to the papers that they would write on. Right? And there's many other statements similar to that from some of the ulama of the past. Ibn Abdul Barr, he has a chapter in his book جامع بيان العلم وفضله, where he titled it باب ذكر بعض من كان لا يحدث عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا وهو على وضوء. He has a chapter called the chapter of mentioning some of those who they would not narrate a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ except that they were in the state of wudu. Right? So that's how, and he mentioned some athar from some of the tabi'i, some of the salaf pertaining to that. Right? From amongst them is the statement he mentioned of Dirar ibn Murrah, where he said, كانوا يكرهون أن يحدثوا عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهم على غير وضوء. That they used to despise narrating the narrations of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم while in a state of impurity. They did not have wudu. Anyway, there's many other examples like that. Al-Imam, in the biography of Al-Imam Abu Uthman As-Sabuni alayhi rahmatullah, he said, ما دخلت بيت الكتب قط إلا على طهارة وما رويت الحديث ولا عقدت المجلس ولا عقدت للتدريس قط إلا على طهارة. He said, I never entered into a house, into a library or a place where there were books, except I was in a state of wudu. And I never narrated a hadith, nor did I have a gathering or a circle of knowledge, nor did I teach, except that I was in a state of wudu. So you see, the ulama of the past, they used to make it a point to, out of respect for the ilm. طيب. The Shaykh, the author, he continues and he says, والشيخ الإمام شمس الأئمة السرخسي كان مبطونا وكان يكرر في الليلة فتوضأ في تلك الليلة 17 مرة لأنه كان لا يكرر إلا بالطهارة وهذا لأن العلم نور والوضوء نور فيزداد نور العلم به. He mentions another scholar who had some stomach issues, and he was studying and repeating things throughout the night. So he said that night, because of his akramakumullah, because of his stomach and needing to go use the facilities, what he would do is he made wudu 17 times that night. He would go make wudu, come back. If he needed to go make wudu, come back. لأنه كان لا يكرر إلا بالطهارة, because he did not want to be reading and repeating what he was reading except while he's in a state of tahara. And then the author says why? Because knowledge is light and wudu is light, so it will be increased in the illumination and the light of the knowledge itself. طيب. So in any case, here is the ta'zeem and the venerating and the respecting of the ilm. Included in that is respecting the book that you're using, the knowledge that you're studying, through being pure. He's also going to talk about other means of respecting the book. He's going to continue the books that you have. He says, وَمِن تَعْظِيمِ الْوَاجِبِ أَنْ لَا يَمُدَّ الرِّجْلَ إِلَى الْكِتَابِ. That from respecting your books is that is important to keep in mind, is that a person does not spread out their feet towards their books. Right? Or they put their books that they're writing with, or whatever it might be that consists of the ilm, where they would their feet would be pointing towards it, or of anything of that nature. Why? Again, out of respect for the ilm. Out of respect for the ilm. You see, this is something that the ulama would mention in their books about the pointing the feet towards the books, or pointing the feet towards the teacher. Right? Why? Because they would the feet are considered to be the lowest part of the body. So it's almost a form of disrespect that you would be putting in contact the lowest part of your body with something that is supposed to be honored and respected. طيب? So here he's speaking specifically about the books. He continues and he says, وَيَضَعُ كُتُبَ التَّفْسِيرِ فَوْقَ سَائِرِ الْكُتُبِ تَعْظِيمًا. He says, if you're stacking up or you're organizing your books, he says to put the books of tafsir over the other books. Why? Out of respect and venerating tafsir, because it is the explanation of the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب? Even some of the ulama that would mention that, again, this is something that is advice, and it's something that is encouraged out of respect for the knowledge. Even when you're organizing your books in your library, in your shelf, to try to organize it, obviously organizing it through subject matter, something that is encouraged, so you have your shelf organized, but to put in the highest, the book, the kalam of Allah, the Quran, or anything connected to the Quran, that should be higher than everything else. Then the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was connected to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and then you can kind of organize it like that. طيب. ولا يضع على الكتاب شيئا آخر. And one should not place over the book anything else. The book that you're using to gather knowledge, or the books of hadith, or whatever it might be, you have a book of hadith, you have a book of tafsir, and you're using that book, and within that book you're taking notes and so on and so forth. You should not place anything else over it. He mentions the statement of his teacher, Burhanuddin. He says, أستاذنا الشيخ الإسلام برهان يحكي عن الشيخ من المشايخ أن فقيها كان وضع المحبرة على الكتاب فقال له بالفارسية برنيابي. He says that my teacher Burhanuddin, he told us about one of the sheikhs a story that one of the sheikhs told him, that there was a scholar of fiqh who he would place his ink pot over his book. Mihbara is the ink pot, where you dip in the thing to take the ink and to write it. So he'll place the ink pot over the book. And then the sheikh said to him in Persian, this word, barnayabi, which means, the meaning of that word is that you will not, by that action that you're doing, you will not attain success. And that action you're doing, it will take away the barakah of your effort. Right? The meaning of it is, لا تجد النفع من عملك. Right? You're not going to find any benefit or any, you're not going to reap the fruits of benefit because of your action. Right? Because in a way, he's trying to explain to the student that you're not giving the due respect that this book deserves. Right? So this is, again, it's showing the importance of part of in respecting and venerating ilm is venerating the books of knowledge. وكان أستاذنا القاضي الإمام الأجل فخر الإسلام المعروف بقاضي خان يقول إن لم يرد بذلك الاستخفاف فلا بأس به والأولى أن يتحرز منه أن يتحرز عنه. And this author, he quoted another teacher of his name was حياكم الله فيك جزاك الله خير. And he said another teacher of his name is he's known as Qadi Khan. He's quoting him and he said إن لم يرد بذلك الاستخفاف فلا بأس به. If the intention of that action, putting something over your book, whatever it might be, if the intention of it was not to demean or disrespect it, then there's no problem. However, he says وَالْأَوْلَى أَن يَتَحَرَّزَ مِنْهُ. But what is better is not to do it. Right? Sometimes you might do it and there's no malice in your heart pertaining. It's not there's no ill intention behind it. He's saying there's no problem. But it's better to avoid it. It's better to avoid it. ومن تعظيم الواجب أن يجود كتابة الكتاب. He says from the respecting and the venerating that is an obligation with regards to the books is that your handwriting in your book should be proper. Even the way you write should be one that is proper. Right? لا يقرمط. The person does not simply scribble or write in a way that is unreadable. ويترك الحاشية إلا عند الضرورة. And the person should leave the حاشية. The حاشية is like the margins, the bottom, the sides. You should leave those sides empty except if there's a need for you to write down on those sides. ويترك الحاشية إلا عند الضرورة. ورأى أبو حنيفة رحمه الله تعالى كاتبا يقرمط في الكتابة فقال لا تقرمط خطك إن عشت تندم وإن مت تشتم. إذا شخت وضعف بصرك ندمت على ذلك. He says that Abu Hanifa saw somebody writing and he was writing very messy. His writing was not neat. So he told him, don't do that to your book. Don't write like that in your book. Why? He says, because if you were to live longer, you're going to come to regret it. When you get older, or when you write messy or you write too small and you're just writing and you're not really paying attention to how you write it so it's readable, when you get older, you will have a hard time reading your own notes. So he says later on, if you live, you would regret. And if you get older, you'll come to regret the fact that you can't even read your own notes. وَإِن مُتَّ تُشْتَمْ. And if you die, people will insult you and make fun of you because they will go through the knowledge and they try to read your writing, but they can't. They'll say, this person can't even write. His writing is so bad, it's unreadable. People will say things about you. The meaning of that is إِذَا شِخْتَ وَضَعُفَ بَصَرُكَ نَدِمْتَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. When you get older and your eyesight becomes weaker, you'll begin to regret that. Man, what did I write here? What did I say? What? And you probably you can't even recall what exactly you wrote. So when you're writing notes, make sure that what you're writing is something that is clear, that you can read, right? Whether it's in the book, on the side of the book, make sure that it's something that is neat. Don't simply just write and then not go back and ensure that your reading is something that you're writing is something that can be read. وحكي عن الشيخ الإمام مجد الدين السرجكي أنه قال ما قرمطنا إلا ندمنا. ما قرمطنا إلا ندمنا وما لم نقابل إلا ندمنا. So he says, another scholar by the name of Majduddin al-Sharjaki, he said that we did not write, in our writing, we did not make it small and cramp it and make it tiny and it's unreadable and it's messy, except that we regretted and we had remorse. Right? نعم. وَمَنْ تَخَبْنَا إِلَّا نَدِمْنَا. And we did not make selections of writing certain things, writing it in abbreviations and writing it in small versions without expanding and making it clear what I'm saying, except we regret it later on. And we wrote things in portions, and then later on I didn't understand what exactly was I trying to say. right? Because sometimes you might think you're going to rely on your own memory. Oh, this is what I'm saying here. It's a short form. This is what I mean. I'll remember it later. But sometimes a person will come to regret that later on. وما لم نقابل إلا ندمنا, right? And we did not remove anything or what's it called, or not include anything except that we regret it, whether it's removing something or erasing something, or except that we regretted it. طيب, in any case, he's giving us some tips pertaining to the way we write. He's going to mention some more. وينبغي أن يكون تقطيع الكتاب مربعا فإن تقطيع أبي حنيفة وهو أيسر إلى الرفع والوضع والمطالعة. Here he says, and it's befitting that the page of the book is one that is, or the way you write the book in the book is one that is murabba'. Murabba' is like rectangular or a square. Meaning, you write within the page, kind of like the pages that you have now, right? In the past, they used to write it in different ways. If you look at some of the manuscripts of some of the older books, you'll see sometimes you'll see the lines written, but there's things written on the side. Sometimes they'll write books circularly. I don't know if you've seen some of the older books. They'll write, and the notes are the way they write it. They're almost writing it in the whole page is almost written in a circular way. Maybe because the page was like that. Allahu a'lam. In any case, he's just giving us some tips in terms of and this is of course in their time of how to ensure that your note taking is clear. Right? Maybe some of the methods that we use now are not the same as the method that we used before, but as long as it serves the purpose, right? Whether you're writing it by hand or now we're using our computers and we're taking notes on our computers and we're adding comments and we're adding whatever it might be, as long as the notes that you're taking of the knowledge is one that is clear, that you can actually go back to and refer to and benefit from and transcribe, and it can be clearly understood, then that is beneficial for you. And it's easier for you in terms of reading, reviewing, right? When you go back to it, it will be easier for you. وينبغي أن لا يكون في الكتاب شيء من الحمرة فإنها صنيع الفلاسفة ولا صنيع السلف. Here he says, and it's befitting that the writing or the handwriting of what you're writing should not be in red, but because the writing of the red is the methodology or the way or the craft of the philosophers and not the craft and the way of the Salaf. طيب. ومن مشايخنا من كره استعمال المركب الأحمر. And some of our teachers, they used to despise the usage of writing with red. Now, this was the case in the past, and you have statements from some of the Salaf that they would say that, right? They would write in black. But there's nothing specifically forbidding somebody to write in red, right? In fact, if you look at, for example, Imam Ibn al-Jama'ah and his book Tadhkiratul Sami', which is one of the books that I mentioned in the introduction, that's an important book for the student of knowledge, Tadhkiratul Sami' wal-Mutakallim fi Adab al-Alim wal-Muta'allim. He mentions in there لا بأس بكتابة الأبواب والتراجم والفصول بالحمرة, that there's no problem if you write, for example, the title headings or the chapter titles, right? Or the chapters of the sections or the biographies, for example, or the headings of each chapter in red, right? فإنه أظهر في البيان, because you can clearly see, oh, this is the chapter heading. Chapter title is in red, and the rest of it is in black. There's no problem. طيب. نعم. But in their time, this was a distinction between the way of the philosophers versus those who attributed to the methodology of the Salaf. But in any case, it's not something it's not an issue of halal and haram or anything. It's an issue of recommendation, right? Even today, even now, people barely, the art of handwriting itself is kind of like phasing out, right? It's not like before. Before, like we were forced to learn how to write cursive and, right, only write in black or blue, and right, red is only for like underlining, and they're very specific about nobody even pays attention to it anymore. Now people write people can't even write anymore. People text, people type, right? People, right? Subhanallah. You'll be shocked. People don't even know how to type anymore, even on a keyboard. And even the art of using a keyboard has been lost because of texting and so on and so forth. Now people just record AI, they tell it to write for them, right? Transcribe. They talk and then everything's transcribed. Allah al-musta'an. طيب. ومن تعظيم العلم تعظيم الشركاء في طلب العلم. So now he's speaking about another angle of venerating knowledge. He spoke about venerating the teacher, venerating the book, the ilm. Now he's saying from the veneration of knowledge and the honoring of knowledge is the honoring of those who are your partners and your mates in studying and seeking knowledge. الشركاء تعظيم الشركاء في طلب العلم والدرس ومن يتعلم منه. Okay? And then he says والتملق مذموم إلا في طلب العلم فإنه ينبغي أن يتملق لأستاذه وشركائه ليستفيد منهم. Right? التملق here could refers to like يعني الزيادة في التودد فوق ما ينبغي يعني it's like an extra form of يعني love and veneration and honoring and respect. So the Shaykh is saying that generally speaking it's not something that it's actually a blameworthy thing that you overly love a person beyond يعني what is normal. But he's saying it's acceptable when it comes to your teacher as well as those who are studying with you to benefit from them. Right? Again, that is the case, however, without going overboard. Right? It's important. When we're talking about loving somebody or showing respect for somebody, right? It's always claused with at their يعني level and their status and what they are deserving. Yani we're not people who overboard, we become so infatuated and we have this adulation for a person to the extreme where yani we'll do anything to make them happy. That's extreme. And the other extreme is to be somebody that's you just disregard. No love and no concern and no care for the person. That's also another extreme, right? But there always has to be a balance, right? But here he's saying that this is from the perspective of showing your love and dedication to ilm, that you have that type of love and adulation for your ulama and your teachers and your classmates and your whoever studying with you. طيب? As a means of benefiting from knowledge. وينبغي لطالب العلم أن يستمع العلم والحكمة بالتعظيم والحرمة وإن سمع المسألة الواحدة أو الكلمة الواحدة ألف مرة. Very important. He says, and it's befitting and it's important for the student of knowledge to listen to knowledge and wisdom with veneration and honoring and respect. Even if he has heard that one mas'ala 1,000 times. Right? Sometimes we will listen to somebody talking and then they might be saying something that you already know and you'll be like, I already know that. I've heard that many times. Right? Now, yes, you might have heard it many times, but now that approach is, whether you realize it or not, is disrespectful to what? To the ilm. I remember one time I gave a khutbah. This is not here, it was at another masjid. And after I gave the khutbah, an elderly man came. And again, I have no doubt that he had sincere intentions. I don't think he had any ill feelings. But sometimes people don't realize what they say. They don't take into consideration what they're saying. So he came to me and he said, MashaAllah, Shaykh, that was a good khutbah. You know, I've been hearing this for 60 years. The youth, they need to hear this. The khutbah, by the way, was اتق الله حيث ما كنت وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. I mean, that applies to everybody. And yes, he probably did hear that for 60 years, right? But this is a statement of the Prophet ﷺ that's applicable to us at every time and every circumstance, right? So we should not, especially as a student of knowledge, we shouldn't have that mindset. We come to the masjid, we're in the masjid, you know, we have a sheikh or the imam or a guest or somebody speaking, and they might be saying a reminder, a hadith that you've heard, that you know. Maybe you even know more fawaid than what's being listed by the sheikh. But out of ihtiram and respect for the ilm and the knowledge and the people of knowledge, you listen and you benefit, even if you've heard it more than once, right? Because the reminder is always going to be benefit. In every situation, a reminder is always going to benefit you if you are somebody who is a person of Iman, right? So the Shaykh here is saying something very important, that even if you heard this many times, don't, it's indicative to the respect of the knowledge. قيل, the Shaykh continues and he says, قيل من لم يكن تعظيمه بعد 1000 مرة كتعظيمه في أول مرة فليس بأهل للعلم. Whoever's veneration and respect for the knowledge that they've heard 1,000 times is not the same as the knowledge that they heard for the first time, they're not people of knowledge. And whether you heard it one time or 1,000 times, you should have the same energy towards it. وينبغي لطالب العلم ألا يختار نوعا من العلم بنفسه بل يفوض أمره إلى الأستاذ. Right? Before moving on to the next point, about the initial point we mentioned, how often do we see? And I can say this, I can speak for myself, that I might be giving a talk or I might be giving a khutbah, and you see many people that are sitting there that are elders, and some of them are like people of knowledge. But yet, and I would think to myself, subhanAllah, like, who am I to speak in front of this person or this imam or this sheikh or this elder who I benefited from when I was a kid? But you still see them out of respect of the ilm, sitting and listening and benefiting. Right? This should be the case. Right? And when we see some of our students giving a khutbah or giving a talk or that we sit and we listen, and we indicating that we are have ihtiram and respect for the knowledge. Not that we should be arrogant and say, oh, mashallah, like, how am I going to sit in front of my student? How am I? La, abadan. That's one of the that type of arrogance, and the Shaykh will talk about this in this chapter and also upcoming, and that's one of the things that destroys ilm. That you have this type of mutakibir and arrogance towards others. You think that you know more than them. But at the end of the day, what's the reality of arrogance is to reject the truth and to put people down, as the Prophet ﷺ said. طيب. The next thing the Shaykh, he says that it's important for the student of knowledge أن لا يختار نوعا من العلم بنفسه بل يفوض أمره إلى الأستاذ. That he should not select for himself the type of knowledge that he wants to learn. Rather, he should go to his teacher and seek his counsel, and whatever his teacher tells him to study first, he studies first. Right? فإن الأستاذ قد حصل له تجارب في ذلك, because the teacher has experience in this matter. فكان أعرف بما ينبغي لكل أحد, and he is the one that understands the most what each person of his students need. And that's a sign of a good teacher. The teacher understands the level of the student. This one, you're at this level, you need this. Start from here, focus on this. You're a bit more advanced, focus on this. You need to start from here. وهكذا. طيب. فكان أعرف بما ينبغي لكل أحد وما يليق بطبيعته. And he also knows what is suitable for that students, and he knows their character type, he knows their learning style, what they're good at, so he can tailor make what they need for them. وكان الشيخ الإمام الأجل الأستاذ برهان الدين يقول كان طلبة العلم في زمان الأول يفوضون أمورهم في التعلم إلى أستاذهم. His teacher Burhanuddin, he said that the students of knowledge of the past, they used to relinquish the matter of what they should seek knowledge, and they used to go to their teachers, and their teachers would tell them what to study and where to start. فكانوا يصلون إلى مقاصدهم ومرادهم. And because of that, they would reach the goal of where they want to reach in terms of seeking knowledge, because they took their counsel and their advice from their teachers. Then he says, وَالْآنَ يَخْتَارُونَ بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Now the students are choosing for themselves. I want to start here first. I want to do this first. I want to do that first. فَلَا يَحْصُلُ مُقْصُودُهُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ وَالْفِقْهِ. Then, as a result, they don't end up reaching where they want to reach in terms of knowledge and understanding. وكان يحكي أن محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري رحمه الله تعالى كان بدأ بكتاب الصلاة على محمد بن الحسن، فقال له محمد رحمه الله اذهب وتعلم علم الحديث لما رأى أن ذلك العلم أليق بطبعه فطلب علم الحديث فصار فيه مقدما على جميع أئمة الحديث. He says that it was narrated, or it was relayed, that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, when he was studying the book of Salah upon Muhammad ibn Hassan, Muhammad ibn Hassan said to Bukhari, go and study the knowledge of hadith. Why? Because of what the teacher saw and how that something that he was good at. Right? It was more befitting for his character and his nature. And he saw ilm al-hadith until he became from the great scholars of hadith. Now, there's a problem in this narration that the Imam mentioned in his book. And the problem is, Wallahu a'lam, I don't know, maybe he meant somebody else, Allah knows best. But the problem of the narration is the fact that Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari and Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani never met. Right? Imam al-Bukhari was born in the year 194. And Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani passed away in 189. So if Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani died in 189, and Imam al-Bukhari was born in 194, how many years is there a gap between his death and his birth? 5 years. So it's impossible that they have met. So there's definitely some breakage in the chain. There's some weakness in the actual narration itself. So maybe he meant somebody else, Allahu a'lam. But in any case, that's what's mentioned there, so we'll just quote it there. But it's impossible that they have, it's impossible to say that Imam al-Bukhari was studying with Muhammad ibn Hassan, he told him, go study, when there was 5 years between the death of one and the birth of the other. Wallahu a'lam. وينبغي لطالب العلم أن لا يجلس قريبا من الأستاذ عند السبق بغير ضرورة. He says another important benefit or important pointer. He says it's befitting and it's important for the student not to keep in mind that they should not sit too close to the teacher when they are reading the lesson to the teacher. Right? Except if there's a need. And unless he says without any need, there's no need for the student to come all the way close to the sheikh. Unless there's a need. Maybe it's too loud. He has to come closer. Mumkin. But if there's no need, he says, there should be some space. بل ينبغي أن يكون بينه وبين الأستاذ قدر القوس. Rather, there should be a distance between the teacher and the student, him and the teacher, the distance of a bow. You know the bow and arrow? The distance of a bow. And it's a tiny amount of distance just to give space to the teacher. طيب. نعم. فإنه أقرب إلى التعظيم. Because the teacher is closer to the one that should be honored and respected and venerated. So unless there is a need and the teacher allows you to come closer, whatever it might be, that the person should not just come up to the teacher. Earlier we mentioned the sheikh, you should not walk in front of him, right? Rather you should walk on his some of the ulama they would mention walk on his right side or walk on his sides or behind him. If you're going to ask him questions, walk towards his side. Don't walk in front of him out of it's a means of disrespect. Wallahu alam. Anyways, وينبغي لطالب العلم أن يحترز عن الأخلاق الذميمة فإنها كلب معنوي. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تدخل الملائكة بيتا فيه كلب أو صورة وإنما يتعلم الإنسان بواسطة الملك. Okay. Here he's talking about the character of the student of knowledge. The student of knowledge should not have bad character. He says the student should not be, the student needs to protect themselves from immoral character. Al-akhlaq al-dhamima, lowly, foul character. He says, فَإِنَّهَا, because that type of character is كَلْبٌ مَعْنَوِي. Right? He describes it as it's a dog. If a ma'nawi here means what's the word I'm looking for? Huh? No. He's referring to it's what's the word I'm looking for in English? No. It's figurative. It's not a literal dog, but it's a figurative. He's using it as a figurative example. Why? What is the figurative referring to here? He says because Prophet ﷺ said He mentioned the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that the angels do not enter a home with his pictures and there is a dog. وَإِنَّمَا يَتَعَلَّمُ الْإِنسَانُ بِوَاسِطَةِ الْمَلَكِ. The person, when he's studying and he's seeking knowledge, they're in the presence of angels. Right? What did the Prophet ﷺ say in the hadith? وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ رِضًا بِمَا يَطْلُبُ. Right? That's one hadith. The angels put their wings down out of respect for the student of knowledge because of what they're doing. Right? Or the other hadith, the other narration that mentions that, you have the angels coming in the gatherings of where Allah is being remembered. Right? مجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله يتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه بينهم إلا نزلت عليهم السكينة وحفتهم الملائكة. Right? So you have not a place in the houses of Allah where Allah is being remembered and the book of Allah is being recited and knowledge is being disseminated, except you have angels coming around it. So in other words, he's saying that this is an expression, right? This is an expression that you should not carry characteristics and akhlaq that is blameworthy or foul, because it is something that is, he's comparing it to the shameful character to, what's it called? The dogs. طيب. Give me a second here. Now, here the Sheikh, he says, the Sharih, he says about the dog, he says, فَكَمَا أَنَّ الْكِلَابَ تُؤْذِي مَنْ يُقَارِبُهَا كَذَلِكَ هَذِهِ الْأَخْلَاقِ تُؤْذِي صَاحِبُهَا وَمَنْ يُقَارِبُهَا. All right, just the way the dog might bring some type of harm or annoyance to those that are around them. How? How would the dog do that? Some might argue, well, what are you talking about? Dogs are man's best friend. Right? They keep you company, they make me feel comfortable, they make me feel nice. So how are you going to tell me that they are going to cause certain harm? They might cause certain harm, right? I mean, if the most basic one for us is the impurity. Right? Prophet ﷺ said that when what do you do with the saliva of the dog? That you have to wash it 7 times, one of the times with dust, as the Prophet ﷺ said, وَهَكَذَا. So there is some adha pertaining to the dog. We have certain uses that we're allowed to use it for, as we have in the Sharia, whether it's for hunting or whatever else it might be. But from amongst the other harms that could be there is that. طيب. In any case, the point is, he's saying that just the way you have that, the person who's in the presence of the student of knowledge, the one that has bad character, he just brings them also annoyance and harm as well. It's not a good character to have, right? You're sitting with the students and this teacher, and you're talking to the teacher in a way that's disrespectful, that's foul. You make the teacher uncomfortable, you make the students uncomfortable. People got to put them in check. What are you doing, akhi? What are you talking? Fear Allah. You know who you're talking to, etc. So don't come to the gatherings of knowledge except that you have with you, noble character. This obviously applies to the Muslim in general, not only specific to Talib al-Ilm, but it's even more emphasized with the student of knowledge. Right? A person should not have bad character in general when you're dealing with the people. When you come to the masjid, when you're in the community, when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with Muslims, you're dealing with non-Muslims, you should always have good character. Right? طيب. He says, وَالْأَخْلَاقُ الذَّمِيمَةُ تُعْرَفُ في كتاب الأخلاق. And bad, evil, foul, immoral character is known and is described, I should say, in the books of akhlaq. Right? When you go to the books of akhlaq, you'll find they talk about what's good conduct and also what? Conduct that we were warned to stay away from, correct? Do we not see that, for example, in Adab al-Mufrad? There are entire chapters that are speaking about things that we should not do, that we're discouraged from doing. And the other books as well. Right? وَكِتَابُنَا هَذَا, he says, وَكِتَابُنَا هَذَا لَا يَحْتَمِلُ بَيَانُهَا. This book here, the one we're reading, we don't have, we're not mentioning the details of what are those immoral or bad characteristics, right? وَلْيَحْتَرِزْ خُصُوصًا عَنِ التَّكَبُّرِ. But he says this specific bad character, you have to stay away from it. And that is arrogance. He says you have to protect yourself and keep yourself specifically away from al-kibr. Why? And takabbur. Why? فَمَعَ التَّكَبُّرِ لَا يَحْصُلُ الْعِلْمِ. Because if a person has takabbur, they will never attain knowledge. You cannot attain knowledge if you are somebody who is mutakabbir. Right? Na'am. So this is very important. That the person has to be somebody who alleviates, protects themselves from any type of knowledge. And there's a hadith, right? Bukhari mentions it in the Sahih, where the Prophet, where the Prophet ﷺ, it's not a hadith. It's a statement that Bukhari mentions in his hadith, in Sahih, a statement of Mujahid, one of the Tabi'een. Mujahid ibn Jabr, he says, لا يتعلم العلم مستحي ولا مستكبر. That two people will not gain knowledge. The one who's shy and the one who's arrogant. Right? The one who's arrogant, why will he not learn? Because he thinks he knows. He thinks he knows, or she thinks she knows. So she will not accept it and listen to whatever it is that you're saying because they think they already know. And why would the shy person not learn? What do you think? How they won't ask questions. If they want to know something and they want to inquire about something, they're too shy to ask. They'll rather keep quiet, and then they will never learn about that thing. Nah. So the shy person never learns. Right? At the moment where they want to inquire about something, they hold themselves back because they're shy, and then later on they forget or they get busy or they don't further do the research or whatever, and then they never learn. طيب. The Shaykh, he quotes some lines of poetry, again talking about this issue of kibr or takabbur, right? And the reality of kibr is like what the Prophet ﷺ said, al-kibru batrul haqqi wa ghamtun nas, as the hadith mentions, right? Is to reject the truth and to put people down. That's what kibr is. Right? Rejecting the truth is kibr. Right? Why was Fir'aun considered to be somebody who was mutakabbir? Because he rejected the truth. And he was putting down everybody else. He felt like he was the best. إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ عَلَى فِي الْأَرْضِ. He saw himself as being the highest over everybody else. Right? Mutakabbir. So the author, he says in this line of poetry here, العلم حرب للفتى المتعالي كالسيل حرب للمكان العالي. He says knowledge is at war with the young person who is arrogant. They're at war. The one who's arrogant will never learn. They're at war. كالسيل حرب للمكان العالي. Just like the way the current is at odds or it's at a battle with a high place, right? If there's a strong current going, right? Is it gonna affect it's not gonna reach the high place. طيب. There's نعم. Or you can say the sail is referring to the hard, the hard rain coming down, right? When it comes down on the highlands, what happens? It comes down viciously, right? It doesn't stay, right? So anything up high does not stay and benefit. The water just goes down. It can't hold it. طيب? So just the way that the person, the seeker of knowledge, can't hold knowledge if they have kibr, right? That knowledge is just being drained, just like that. Hard rain coming down is just going down the highlands, down towards the lower areas. طيب. He mentions another statement, another quote, another line of poetry where he says, بجد لا بجد كل مجد فهل جد بلا جد بمجد فكم عبد يقوم مقام حر وكم حر يقوم مقام عبد. He says, بجد لا بجد كل مجد. It is with hard work, it is with hard work and not with any type of hold on. نعم. Yeah, it is with hard work that a person attains some type of glory. Not their, it's not their status, or it's not by chance, right? Rather, it's by hard work, right? فهل جد بلا جد بمجدي, يعني is it just by chance rather than with hard work that they will achieve that glory? No, they can only achieve that through hard work. He says, فكم عبد يقوم مقام حر, how many slaves, right, will rank or will stand amongst the ranks of those who are free, and how many of those who are free are in the ranks of those who are slaves? بمعنى, he's saying that they are what's going to get you somewhere is not your title or your status or your situation or your condition, but rather it's your effort. All right? When he says how many people from the slaves are considered to be in the ranks of those who are free, بمعنى, in terms of their effort, in terms of what they have done, in terms of what they have produced, in terms of what the legacy they've left behind, versus others who have, there's nothing to be mentioned about them, despite the fact of whatever status they are, but it's because of the hard work. So he's concluding the chapter by talking about some of the characteristics that we need to stay away from, and the characteristics that we need to keep in mind pertaining to the glorifying and exemplifying ilm. طيب. The next chapter is quite long, so we'll leave that for Wednesday, inshallah ta'ala. The chapter is talking about al-jidd wal-muwadhabatu wa muwadhabati al-himma. Al-jidd fil jiddi wal muwadhabati wal himma. It's talking about hard work and consistency and having high aspirations in our studies, right? That chapter is a little bit longer than this chapter, so we'll leave that one for next class, inshallah. Then the chapters after that are a lot shorter, so those ones we might be packing them in together, inshallah ta'ala, because the intention that I have is to finish the book by, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. We should be done the book, inshallah ta'ala. Bi'idhnillah. Bi'idhnillah, if Allah makes it easy. So we'll stop here for tonight. We'll be back on Wednesday night for the next session. Wallahu a'lam. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Jazakumullah khair.